For International Day of Sign Languages, that is today, September 23rd, I thought I'd pop on and talk about how sign language can be helpful with the treatment of childhood apraxia of speech. If you work in earlier intervention or you work with these kids, some of which who know a lot of signs or just even some signs, what we see is that sign language can kind of help them get their words out if they're struggling with that kind of on-demand piece. So I might have a child who I want to say more, and if they do this while they're saying it, it helps their speech motor system. The best way I've ever seen this explained was just simply, why does this work? Because motor helps motor. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the actual sign. It could even be a sign approximation. I have one boy do this, and by doing this, it helps him say more verbally. And he also has his own gestures. So, when he puts his arm up, it physically helps his mouth come out with the word up. And sometimes I even use it as a cue. I say, sign it too, like show me with your hand. And when he uses his hand, it helps him get out these words. Another great way that you can use sign language in therapy for apraxia is when you're trying to get them to combine words, but you're not wanting to give them a model because we're wanting to put it on their speech motor system to plan and program the phrase. So in this example, instead of a verbal cue, I'm fading the cue to sign cue. So if I want him to say more mama, I'm going to be like, okay, let's do our combination. Let's say, and then he says it, and then I might go, and see if he can combine it on his own without me giving him a verbal cue or a verbal model. I have spoken to 2 young adults before who grew up with CAS, both of which who went and officially learned how to use and how to learn ASL, and they both report that using ASL does help them physically, verbally speak when they're doing it together. Even if the child themselves doesn't use some sort of ASL or signs, this type of sign cueing or gestural cueing can still be effective in getting words combined. With one child, I just made up sign cues for is and the, because there aren't really those sign cues in English or in ASL. And so to get him to say a whole phrase, I was having him, I was asking him where questions. And let's say I said, where is your nose? And then he'd be like, face. And I'd be like, yes, but let's do it. And he knows that this is the sign cue for on. And then I go, and then we'd look at the picture, which acted as the cueing. So even if they don't know it themselves, you can teach them. Again, I talk about all the time that there's nothing magical about anyone's cues in childhood apraxia speech, but the magic is that there is a cue. So let me know, do you use sign or gestural cueing in your practice with these kids? And if you're interested in more content like this, like and follow for more. My name is Laura Smith. I'm a speech language pathologist specializing in motor speech out in Denver. And if you like this content, follow for more.